In a Cascade mountain stream in late summer, a Chinook salmon pushes upstream through water that should be cold and full. But it's running low and warm. That single fish isn't a sad story. It's a symptom. Every ecosystem in the Seattle region, its forests, rivers, coastlines, and the cold depths of Puget Sound, is being quietly rewired, and we're only beginning to understand exactly how. That salmon pushing upstream through warm, low water in a Cascade stream, trace the thread upstream, all the way to the mountains above Seattle, and the story gets bigger, much bigger. Stand on any ridge east of the city on a clear morning, and Mount Rainier fills the horizon, white and enormous. For thousands of years, that white has been a promise, not just scenery, but a slow-release water system that the entire region runs on. The Cascade snowpack is essentially Seattle's frozen reservoir. It catches winter precipitation, holds it, and releases it through spring and early summer, keeping rivers cold and full precisely when salmon need them most. If a specific sourced figure cannot be located, consider replacing with recent measurements at North Cascade monitoring sites have repeatedly recorded snowpack well below the long-term average, a trend that scientists describe as the new direction. That's not a bad year, that's the new direction. And on Rainier itself, the area covered by glaciers has fallen from nearly 50 square miles to just over 29 square miles. A decline of nearly 42%. Here's what that number actually means for the river below. It's not just less water, it's different water arriving at the wrong time. Salmon runs evolved over millennia around a very specific schedule. Snowmelt peaking in late spring, rivers running cold and high through early summer, then tapering. The insects that salmon fry eat, the invertebrates that colonize stream gravel, the bears that gather at the riverbanks, all of them calibrated to that same clock. Now, the snowmelt arrives weeks earlier, the rivers peak and thin before the run is ready, and everything that depended on that timing finds itself out of step. Scientists call this phenological mismatch, the decoupling of biological events that evolved in sync. Salmon fry emerge into rivers where the insect bloom has already passed its peak. Bears arrive at traditional fishing grounds after the run has thinned. The calendar that held this ecosystem together is being rewritten, one warmer year at a time. Follow that thread downstream, and it leads somewhere unexpected. The southern resident orcas, the pods that range the Salish Sea roughly 150 miles from those Cascade glaciers, are in serious trouble, and the reason traces directly back to the snowpack. With just 74 individuals remaining, southern resident orcas continue to be pushed toward extinction, and scientists identify the lack of their primary prey, Chinook salmon, as the leading cause. These are ocean animals, but their crisis is a mountain problem. Fewer salmon making it through warming, low rivers mean fewer adult Chinook reaching the sea. Salmon are spending less time in the ocean before returning to spawn, resulting in smaller fish. And smaller fish mean less nutrition per catch for an orca that may need to consume dozens of them a day. This is a trophic cascade made visceral, a retreating glacier on Rainier, translated into a starving apex predator in the open water of the Salish Sea. Now, turn from the rivers towards the hillsides, and the disruption takes a different shape. Western red cedar, the tree that has defined the lowland forests of Washington for millennia, the tree central to the material and spiritual culture of Coast Salish peoples, the tree whose canopy shelters the understory that dozens of species depend on, is dying back across the region. The culprit is a combination of warming summers and soil that no longer retains enough moisture through the dry season. Cedar is not a drought-tolerant species. It never needed to be. But the summers it evolved in are no longer the summers it faces, and the stress is showing in yellowing crowns and dying stands spreading across Washington's lowland forests. Zoom out to a continental scale and you see the snowpack map shrinking across the entire Pacific Northwest. Zoom back in, all the way down to a single cedar seedling on a hillside east of Seattle, and you see the same story at its smallest resolution. A seedling that cannot survive the summer soil temperatures its parent tree once thrived in without a second thought. One system, one unraveling, playing out at every scale simultaneously. But the disruption doesn't stop at the shoreline. The southern resident orcas are down to 74 individuals, and the thread leads all the way back to a retreating glacier on Rainier. Does that connection surprise you, or did you see it coming? Drop your answer in the comments below. Now let's follow the disruption past the shoreline and into Puget Sound itself. That Chinook salmon pushing upstream through warm, low water in a Cascade stream. The same forces reshaping its river are already working on the water it swims toward. Follow the thread past the shoreline and into Puget Sound itself, and the rewiring becomes total. Stand at the edge of the sound on a summer evening, and the water looks unchanged. It is the same deep blue-grey it has always been, catching the last light off the Olympics. But the surface temperature has been creeping upward. In the summer of 2024, sea surface temperatures in the Salish Sea ran 1.5 degrees Celsius above the 1991 to 2020 baseline, a spike that persisted through fall. Beneath that calm surface, the chemistry is shifting in ways you cannot see. When the ocean absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, the CO2 reacts with water and creates a foundational change in seawater chemistry. The result is water that becomes progressively more acidic. As acidity rises, it influences calcium carbonate, the material shells are made from. Higher acidity tends to dissolve calcium carbonate molecules, reducing the concentration of carbonate ion until, at low enough levels, the chemistry can actually run in reverse, dissolving the shells of living creatures while they are still alive. Recent pH measurements in Puget Sound have recorded values dropping to 7.8, a level at which pteropod shells begin to show visible dissolution. One of those living creatures is the pteropod, a tiny free-swimming sea snail, barely the size of a lentil, that forms a critical layer at the base of the marine food web. When pteropod shells begin to dissolve, the loss isn't just one small animal. It is a foundational brick being pulled from the structure that everything above it depends on. And the compounding doesn't stop there. Warmer, more stratified water creates the conditions for harmful algal blooms, dense mats of toxic algae that suffocate bottom habitat and make shellfish unsafe to harvest. Recent observations in the Puget Sound region have already recorded unusually low dissolved oxygen levels, a direct signature of this stratification, as warmer surface water traps less oxygen and prevents it from mixing downward to the depths where bottom-dwelling species live. When oxygen thins in the deep, the ecosystem below the surface begins to compress. Species that cannot move fast enough simply run out of room. Now add bull kelp. Seattle's kelp forests, the towering underwater canopies that once stretched along much of the Sound's coastline, have retreated by more than 90% over the past century and a half, squeezed by warming water and the same acidification that stresses the organisms kelp depends on for its own ecosystem. Kelp is not just scenery. It is nursery habitat for juvenile rockfish, Dungeness crab, and herring. Herring feed the salmon. Salmon feed the orca. The same trophic cascade that began with a retreating glacier on Rainier is now playing out underwater, link by link in the same direction. The people who understand this most viscerally are the ones whose relationship with these waters predates written records. Indigenous communities of the Coast Salish peoples, who have harvested Puget Sound's shellfish, crab, and herring for thousands of years, are watching the calendar of abundance shift in real time. The blooms arrive earlier, the crab seasons shorten, the herring schools thin. The knowledge passed down across generations is increasingly out of sync with the water those generations described. Commercial fishers report the same displacement. Seasons that once arrived on predictable calendars now slip and compress, forcing adaptation to a system that no longer holds its shape. That Chinook salmon you watched pushing through a warm, low Cascade stream in the opening of this story is connected in a direct and traceable chain to a dissolving pteropod shell in the Sound below, to a retreating glacier on Rainier above, to a dying western red cedar on a hillside east of the city. These are not separate problems wearing the same label. They are one system: mountain, forest, river, and sea, being rewritten by the same forcing at the same time, at every scale simultaneously. Almost no other city on Earth sits at the intersection of alpine snowpack, old-growth forest, salmon river, and inland sea the way Seattle does. That convergence made it one of the most ecologically rich corners of the continent. It also makes it one of the most legible, a place where the connections between systems are short enough to trace, vivid enough to see, and urgent enough that understanding them is no longer just a scientific exercise. It is the first step toward deciding what we fight to keep. Subscribe for more stories like this one, and watch the next video right now.